It was a normal day, until it wasn't. My wife and I had just stepped outside, ready to enjoy a quiet afternoon, when things took a turn we never saw coming. We live in a peaceful neighborhood, but sometimes the wrong person can ruin that peace. And that's exactly what happened. Out of nowhere, a woman from the HOA, let's call her Karen, came charging towards us. Tensions had been rising with her for weeks, but this was different. She was angry, her face twisted in rage. The next thing I knew, she was holding a loaded gun, pointing it directly at my wife. My heart raced. Every moment felt like it was stretching on forever. I thought we were done for, but then just as quickly as the nightmare began, everything changed. 5 seconds later, I showed up. What happened next would shock you, and it would change everything. I wasn't about to let this escalate any further, but how I reacted might surprise you. Stick around to find out what went down when I finally faced the HOA Karen. To understand why things had escalated so quickly, I need to give you a bit of background. This wasn't just a random outburst. We'd been dealing with this HOA Karen for months. It all started when she decided to target us over some trivial rule violations, things like the wrong color on our mailbox, or the height of the grass in the front yard. It was petty, really, but she took it way too seriously. And every time we tried to talk it out, she just got more and more hostile. We tried to keep things calm, keep it friendly, but Karen wasn't having it. She wanted control. She'd already had a run-in with several neighbors, and word on the street was she liked to get things done her way, no matter what. And now, it felt like she was getting closer to something much more dangerous than just a simple complaint. Her threats weren't just about paperwork anymore. They were personal. That afternoon, as my wife and I stood there, trying to figure out how to diffuse the situation, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the breaking point. Karen wasn't just angry anymore. She was desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. My heart pounded as I rushed to the scene. I had no idea what was going to happen next, but one thing was for sure. I had to stop this before things went any further. As I rushed toward the confrontation, I could feel the adrenaline surging through me, but at the same time, a knot tightened in my stomach. Every step I took brought me closer to a situation that I knew could explode at any second. I had to think quickly. Was I about to walk into a confrontation with a woman who, just moments before, was holding a loaded gun? And what was she thinking, standing there with that kind of power in her hands? I caught sight of her as I rounded the corner, and she was still standing there, a sick grin on her face, her finger hovering dangerously near the trigger. My wife, thankfully still calm, stood frozen beside her, eyes wide with fear, but refusing to back down. It was as if Karen enjoyed the control she had in this moment, relishing every second of it. But what I didn't expect was a subtle shift in her demeanor. She seemed almost unstable, as if something deep inside her had snapped. It wasn't just the rules anymore. This wasn't about the HOA violations, or the small things we'd been fighting about for weeks. No, this was personal. And now, I was starting to wonder if Karen had been waiting for a moment like this all along, just to prove her power over someone. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears as I approached, and I knew that I had seconds, maybe less, to diffuse this. But even as I tried to stay calm, I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what I said, the situation was already out of control. What will it take to bring this to an end without it turning into a tragedy? What was going on in Karen's head that had pushed her to this breaking point? I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep my cool. I stopped a few feet away from them, my mind racing for any solution that wouldn't lead to more violence. Karen's grip on the gun tightened, her eyes never leaving my wife's face, as though she was deciding whether or not she was going to pull that trigger. The air between us was thick with tension. I could see her hands trembling slightly, her finger still dangerously close to the trigger. For a split second, I wondered if this was it, if this was the moment everything would spiral out of control. "Karen, please," I said, my voice steady, though I could feel the fear trying to claw its way out. "Put the gun down. This doesn't have to go any further. No one wants this. She didn't answer, but I could see her eyes flicker with something. Anger, fear, or maybe regret. Whatever it was enough to make me hesitate. I'd seen her angry before, but never like this. It was like I was standing in front of a completely different person. She was unraveling right in front of me, and I couldn't predict what she might do next. "Stay out of this," she snapped, her voice breaking. "You don't understand what she's done. You think I'm the villain here, but she's the one, Po." Before she could finish, I heard a rustling from behind. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something was coming. Something or someone was about to make this even more chaotic. My mind raced, trying to figure out what it could be, but my eyes never left Karen's. I had to stay focused. I had to keep my wife safe. Karen's breathing became more rapid, her eyes darting around like she was caught in a whirlwind. I could sense that she was on the edge, ready to either back down or snap completely. The gun was still pointed at my wife, and I had no idea which direction this was going to take. Every second felt like a lifetime. Just put it down," I repeated, my voice firmer this time. But even as I said it, I could feel the weight of what was at stake. Would I make it in time to stop her? Or had we already crossed a line that couldn't be undone? I spent the next few days relentlessly digging into Karen's past. With a mix of desperation and determination, I contacted neighbors who had been in the community longer, searched public records, and even spoke to a few journalists who had covered her before. Slowly, the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. Karen had been involved in multiple shady dealings, manipulating HOA rules for years to benefit herself and her friends. Her goal had always been control, and she used her position to tear down anyone who dared stand in her way. But what really hit me was a discovery I hadn't expected. In one of the old records, I found something disturbing. Karen had been involved in a lawsuit years ago for fraud, where she had tried to use her position to force a family out of their home, all to seize their property. It was a textbook case of abuse of power. My heart sank as I realized that Karen wasn't just attacking us for a letter. She saw our success as a threat, a symbol of everything she couldn't control. Armed with this information, I contacted the reporter again, and together, we managed to piece together the full story. The media got hold of the story, and soon, the pressure on the HOA became overwhelming. Within days, the board was forced to drop the investigation, and Karen was removed from her position. But just when I thought it was over, another bombshell dropped. As the HOA Karen was packing up, she turned to me with a look of quiet satisfaction. "You've won this round," she said, almost cryptically. "But don't think for a second that you know the whole story." I was left standing there, uncertain. Had I truly won? Or was this just the beginning of a much darker game I hadn't even realized I was part of? As I stood outside, watching Karen walk away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this victory had come at a much higher cost than I could comprehend. The future still felt uncertain. Who was really pulling the strings, and what would they do next? The day the HOA dropped their investigation was supposed to feel like a victory, but instead, it was the moment I realized something wasn't quite right. The entire neighborhood seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen's departure was part of a larger plan. She'd been removed from her HOA position, yes, but there was something off about the way she left. It felt like she had orchestrated this whole thing, like she was playing a game, and I was still a pawn in it. Then, out of nowhere, a letter arrived. Not from the HOA, but from a law firm. The letter was addressed to me personally, and the words on the page were enough to stop me cold. It said that Karen was suing us, but not for the reasons we thought. She wasn't suing for damages over the incident with the acceptance letter. No, she was suing for defamation, claiming that the public accusations about her illegal activities had ruined her reputation. And she wasn't alone. She had several other former HOA members backing her up, all of them threatening to sue us for every penny we had. I couldn't believe it. After everything that had happened, after the media coverage, after the way Karen had been exposed for who she truly was, she was turning the tables on us. It felt like we were back at square one, except this time, the stakes were higher. Now it wasn't just about my daughter's college dreams. It was about our livelihood, our future.